topic is going to be the silent illumination revisited, as we do all the time. We start with a vow and recitation of the four great vows. Please join your palms. Vow. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of self-nature. I vow to cut off endless vexations of self-nature. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma of self-nature. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood of self-nature. As I mentioned, the topic today is going to be silent illumination revisited. I looked through, I was Googling and on silent illumination, and I ran into a bunch of my own old lectures from not that old, 2023 on silent illumination, and it was kind of interesting to see silent illumination 2 years down the line, or 3 years now, I guess, and what has changed and what works, and in terms of this, and I think it's really important to discuss. Silent illumination is a method of practice, which is sometimes called the method of no method, because there isn't particular method there that one uses. It's a combination of samatha, concentration, entering into samadhi and samapati, and all of that combined is called dhyana, the practice. This is something in terms of silent illumination, although people don't mention it in that way, it is something that when we use it on the cushion, but we can take it off the cushion as well. And most people really don't understand that part. And the difference is that as one begins to develop samadhi, you can take the samadhi off the cushion. I posted an article from Master Sheng last week on the Mighty Network, and it was talking about the samadhi of sitting, samadhi of walking, samadhi of engaged in any kind of a function, and it is in this way. And what's important in terms of us and how we begin to understand how the practice is that if we only practice on the cushion, then we're only maybe using daily 1/48th of the day, or 1/24th of the day to practice, where the practice really should be something of 24/7, meaning that you should be engaged in the practice all the time. As you become adept with the practice, using skillful means in every moment, then you approach the cushion and you already have a samadhi foundation there. And I kind of early on discovered that I could get into samadhi very quickly, and it was simply because I was practicing all the time. So it wasn't hard just to simply cross your legs, put your hands together, and then be in a samadhi. But that just comes with practice. It's not necessarily something that comes right away, but it is in the manner in which we practice that we can work in this way. So I strongly recommend that whatever I'm talking about tonight about meditation and silent illumination, that you use this kind of a method in everything that you do. And if you are going to practice in silent illumination, it's really difficult to practice silent illumination without some kind of a foundational grounding that's there. I had mentioned before, Huineng's Platform Sutra is simply the platform upon which one bases their practice on of dhyana, and that enables the prajna, the wisdom, to come out. And so the same thing is when we're using silent illumination, we have to enable at least our worldly wisdom to begin to manifest and understand. And this is where we could say our demarcation point is at, where we start. And when we can practice in this way, then it works very well. So we start out with the first thing that we should know and understand when we're sitting. And again, in everything that we do. So I'm going to talk concentrating more on the sitting part of it, but in everything that we do, we should understand this, and that is that just this mind is the Buddha. Apart from this mind, there's no other mind. Also, an axiom of that is that the mind of the Buddhas and the patriarchs and the sentient beings is no different. It's this very mind that you're using right now. What is important about this is that it brings us to this understanding of ourselves when we can turn that corner and no longer attach ourselves to the idea of an ego, that we are what in the Asta Sutra called a jina, Jina. I don't know how you pronounce that in
This is Jinnah.
Jina. Okay, I copied the way your mouth moves so I could make it come out right. Jina, which is a hero or a winner. And so the thing that's really important foundationally is you already have this Buddha mind. And it's not something that you have to put one mind down and pick up another. You already have it, and it's there. It may be obscured by habitual patterns, but it's still simply just mind. It is why, and you have to think about this very carefully, why everything is connected, why everything works. If there were discrete ideas of egos and etc., a duality, none of this would work. The reason Buddhism works in terms of um, gaining the so-called transcendence is because there's no transcendence whatsoever. It is just simply the recognition that there is no duality, and that this mind that you have is the same mind that any Buddhas have, and that the next part that we should understand um, is that everything is created by the mind. And this is very important because this is the gateway to this transcendental wisdom. We have the wisdom of every day, which means like don't say bad things, think of good thoughts, that type of things, be generous, whatever. And then this transcendental type of a wisdom, which enables us to awaken within a dream. Now, imagine if you were dreaming at night and then you awaken in the dream. Perhaps some of you have had this kind of an experience before where you've awakened in a dream and you go, wow, I'm in a dream. And then you can navigate in a dream and you're liberated in the dream because nothing can harm you there. You can manipulate it, change it however you want to do. But there is a transcendence, at least in that dream, that you are no longer ignorant to the fact that you were dreaming. This is the same kind of a transcendence when the mind is simply resting in mind and understanding that whatever is appearing is a a component of habitual patterns and appearances, but they themselves have no independent substance or value. What Ning Tu Faron said, that it was the substance of mind is mind. The meaning of mind, or the primary meaning of mind, is mind. Everything is reduced down to this uh, common denominator, and the denominator is mind. And when we understand that, then we understand, if you remember your fractions, whatever's above it's a numerator, and it has myriad of appearances, many different appearances, but the denominator is infinite. So there's nowhere that the numerator is going to exceed the denominator, okay, in terms of that. So in any case, uh, when we see things in this way, then we understand that even space, um, and and ego is created by the mind. Now, this is the transcendent aspect of this, which is that we have to understand that what you perceive to be your ego is also um, illusory. It's temporary. It isn't that which becomes enlightened. If you sitting and meditating and trying to get your red meatball, imagine yourself sitting like a red meatball on the cushion, and you want that to become enlightened, it's not going to happen. There's nothing to enlighten to, because no matter what, that cushion, that blob of flesh that's there, even that which believes that it is part of this blob of flesh, is illusory. It's transient, constantly changing. So we have to understand this aspect of it. And when we understand it, then not only is everything that you see and think and feel, all the sensations and the five skandha of form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness, they're all illusory. And consciousness, we always stick on form and say, oh, the form is not real, but the consciousness too. It doesn't mean that the consciousness is negated completely. It is that there's not a separate consciousness there, although it appears to have a separate consciousness, but it is what the Yogacharans say is consciousness only, or mind only. And their school comes from this type of a viewpoint in this way. The Theravadins on their side thought everything is real because it's created by the mind, it's real, but they painted themselves into the corner to a certain extent, because then there was the idea of wanting to reach nirvana, which we'll talk about it in a moment. But it trapped them into the idea that there is this consciousness that passes on, it moves on, and it isn't in this way. So before we sit on the cushion, we have to know what we're doing on the cushion. And I put you, in quotes, because there's not really a you in this way unless we use you as mind itself, collective mind. So we talk about in the Diamond Sutra, no personality, life, uh, no ego, personality, life, or being. And so there's no ego. You don't have an ego, although, ego always rears its ugly heads, our head, in whatever we do. It's one of the hardest things to get rid of. Um, and uh, um, and a personality is kind of a very interesting thing, because in a personality we believe that to be us, that we're humorous, we're somber, we're serious, we're this way, we're that way, whatever we think we are, and we take on this persona. And because taking on this persona, we believe that that's distinct from other personas and independent of the other personas. We do not see that's an accumulation of habitual patterns appearing in mind. This is the part that's difficult for us to do. We can see everything appearing, but then when it comes to our ego and our personality, we go, well, that's me. That that is who I am, the one that wants to become enlightened. And I've mentioned before, it is the one that wants to become enlightened that is actually the fundamental obstruction to enlightenment, um, because it wants something. It's seen something apart. It's like have and have not. It doesn't have it, but it wants it. But it doesn't want to have all these obstructions. So it's trying to put something down, pick something up. But it isn't in this way. So foundationally, we have to understand when we sit on the cushion, just this mind is the Buddha mind. The next foundational principle that we should understand, and I say understand in a way where it's a transcendent understanding, is that mind is inconceivable. Um, if you try to define what is mind, not consciousness and not this grasping or something that's trying to cling to space or time, but but what is mind? Because mind is we take mind to be consciousness, but it isn't in that way. Mind is the matrix of everything that's there. I like crystals, and rocks, and a crystal cannot form in and of itself. It has to form on a matrix, and and the same thing with appearances. They're these magic crystals that form, from a matrix, and so they they are there. It is the mind ground that we cannot see, but it is that which, and I'm probably using it in the correct way, that it's a magic crystal that appears out of nowhere. Literally, it is in that way, but it's not really out of nowhere as much as it is appearing within mind. And but without mind, it cannot appear. We don't understand the matrix. When we sit to meditate, we are simply resting in the matrix, that which gives rise to these crystal formations, like in geology. We are in the matrix. It is what produces all of these appearances. We don't produce appearances. We simply rest the mind. There's nothing that we should produce, because anything that mind would produce is uh, is inconsequential to the extent that it belongs to mind. It doesn't have an independent value, although it appears that way. And if you stub your toe, you'll say for sure, this pain is real and it's there. But how many of you have stubbed your toe, and even to this date, you still feel the pain that you felt when you stubbed your toe? No, it went, right? Hopefully, you didn't, you still don't have it, right? It's gone. If it was real, it would always be there. So when we look at things and we understand it, we have to use these fundamental principles. So, but the mind is inconceivable. We cannot define it in any way. All we know is that the mind is. Uh, uh, this is where I did a patch job and jumped out of line here. I'll get back to it. But in any case, the next part is that by its own true nature, it is still. It likes to remain still. When you see for instance, in weather formations, low and high pressure systems, the meteorologists always talk about, and they're going, and they're coming in with a big pressure system, a big low coming into here, and it's going to cause us rain. At least in LA and La La Land, that's how they talk. But they really dumb it down quite a bit. But in any case, there's a naturalness that there it's moving towards a state of equanimity. Even in nature, it is in this way. And it's the same in the mind. But the mind, as it begins to settle down, there's no highs or lows there. Everything is just fundamentally still. And the appearance of movements is just simply the stillness of the mind activated and moving towards, in a natural way, what we call the self nature of mind. Now, this idea of the self nature of mind, we can talk about that for quite a bit of time. Or when we say self nature, we can also say Buddha nature. But this Buddha nature is at this point in time, let's say, the highest level of doctrinal Buddhism, which move beyond the idea of everything is real, everything is in the Mahayana, then to from Theravada to Mahayana, and to everything is empty, to then Buddha nature. And the Buddha nature walks a very fine line there. And when I say it's this way, what I'm referring to is not necessarily Buddha nature doing that, but scholars and teachers have to walk a very fine line there so that they don't fall into a trap, because there are so many scholars that are waiting to say, look, there it is. You guys, you are monotheistic. There's a Buddha there, or that there's something there that you say that it's empty, but you're really looking at it differently. It isn't in this way. And the difference is in the transcendence that one has to do that. If they haven't transcended, we can only talk about it. Still not bad, but we can't know definitively about it. But scholars always want to talk about it in a definitive way. But it isn't really in that way. We have to understand, again, this is the platform or the foundation upon which why we're sitting to practice is to have this kind of a transcendence within the mind. So the transcendence is simply seeing things as they are. And this is the Buddha nature. We talked about the nature of the mind. There's a saying that to know the arising mind is the non-arising mind. And the nature of the mind, the true nature of the mind is non-arising. It doesn't arise. So when we sit to meditate, if you're sitting to meditate and you're just resting mind and mind, it's resting in the matrix. That's all you're doing, is just resting the mind. There's nothing happening, nothing going on, yet it's not separate from it. It precisely is aware of its surroundings, but is not confused that those surroundings are other than mind itself. But it knows the surroundings are the arising mind, not the non-arising mind. The non-arising mind is the matrix. So when you sit to meditate, you're just resting mind and mind. You're resting in the matrix. And so if things arise in the mind, whatever, habitual patterns arise in the mind, those, we just let them go. They're in mind no matter what. They're not going to leave mind. We don't have to push them out. Um, but what we do is simply bring everything back to the matrix. Let it just sit. That's why they call it just sitting, because that's all that's happening is just sitting. Um, so when we rest the mind in this way, um, we we don't rest the mind by force. This is very, very important. Um, and then again, this goes back to Ning Tu Farong, which he was saying that we don't rest the mind by force. We don't muscle it, block thoughts. It is possible to block your thoughts, but it takes an incredible amount of energy to block your thoughts. But entering into this would be called dark samadhi, which is that it's like going into a refrigerator and closing the door. The light goes off, and you're just sitting in there, and nothing's happening. And but it isn't in that way. That's a dark samadhi. You just blocked everything at the sensory gates. And this is a big confusion sometimes, because when they talk about sealing the sensory gates, it doesn't mean that you seal them like you put earmuffs on and blinders on, and one of those what do they used to call those sensory deprivation chambers? They used to be very popular, where people would go into a tank that's body temperature and just float there with no sound, nothing. It's not like that. It is simply just resting the mind. The mind is completely aware, and even if you sat in this way, you would see that there's this um, everything has not gone away around you. The only thing that has happened is that everything is in a state of equanimity. Okay, so then the next part is that as you sit in this way, you have to maintain a continuous resting of the mind. Um, you cannot be tricked by mind. You cannot have a lazy dog meditation. It isn't sitting half practicing and then watching movies in your head. That's You're wasting your time. Get off the cushion. You're just wasting your time. All you're doing is being counterproductive, and what you're doing is developing bad habits. Causes and conditions never fail. If you practice with bad habits, guess what? You're going to have bad habits the next time. It's a no-brainer. And so, um, kind of quoting the infomercials, it's like the biggest no-brainer of mankind. If you're not practicing well, that's going to be your level. But when you practice continuously, there's a payoff. But you have to maintain a patience. Be patient. Don't be looking for colors. I mentioned this quite a bit, being from the 60s. Few people understand what I'm talking about, but in the 60s, everybody was looking for colors. You don't want to be dazzled at the sensory gates. No. And so you just let that all go. Um, just rest. That's all. Now, the next part is to lightly hold it. You don't muscle it, as I'd mentioned before. You hold it just like this, as if you're just making contact with your thumb and your forefinger. Just lightly, 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 holding the method. You don't need to exert so much effort. The more thoughts that arise, and thoughts of trying to hold the method, the more mind power that you use. Lately I've come to an age where I keep track of my blood pressure, and it's doing fine. But what's interesting is I play a game with it, and when I take my blood pressure, I I make my mind blank, and as soon as I make my mind blank, sometimes I can drop 15 to 20 points in the reading, sometimes even more than that. But if I sit and I forget to just sit, then the numbers will go up. Or if I have some thought, I've got to do this, and I'm not no longer continuously just sitting, the numbers go very high. And it uses a lot more energy on the physical side to have thoughts. Actually, the thoughts use up a lot of your energy. Have you ever had days where you're so tired because you've been thinking all day long, and then you go to sleep, and what do? You're still thinking. You can't turn it off. You have to let it go. Just sit. If you can sit well on a cushion, you can sleep at night. Just don't sleep while you're at work, unless you're a mattress tester. I'll give you a special excuse for that. Okay. Um, so you have awareness when you're meditating. You should let this awareness just envelop you in all 10 directions. For those who can't conceive of that, just make it 360-degree awareness. And you let the consciousness sink as if it's like a roof tile that's dropped in the ocean. And so you drop a roof tile in the ocean, and it just goes down, 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 down. It's not coming back up because it's a roof tile. The gravity's just going to drop it down, but gently. It's not going to hit the floor. It's just going to keep going down. And you just keep it moving down. Another metaphor that was used by John Crook, one of Master Shen Yang's first disciples, was he wrote a book entitled that, which is catching a feather with a fan. So if you have a feather and it's coming down, to catch the feather with the fan, you have to meet it there, but you can't go like this because the feather will blow away. So the more you try to get it, it will blow away. So you just have to see it, the direction it's going, and you just meet it there with very little effort, very little effort. Just ratchet it back, and it will go in this way. Avoid the temptation of measuring what your effort is producing. Don't try to take test soundings of where you're at or how deep it is or anything like that. Don't have any kind of idea in this way. All you're doing is indulging in the ego. There's no need for that. Remember, it's just resting mind in mind. If you rest the mind in the matrix is still. It can produce the crystals, but left to itself, it would just sit there. And you begin to become aware, not consciously, like your ego consciously, but mind itself becomes aware of the most subtlest appearances of ego, personality, life, or a being that is appearing there. And so when it detects this slight movement, it illuminates it and then simply returns to the matrix, because the matrix there and those crystal formations that are appearing on it, they are not separate. There's no duality there. Those crystals, in fact, they're not really real crystals. They're illusions, imaginations. Imaginations of who? Not you. It's not your imagination. You are an imagination. So you cannot put yourself over onto the side of the knowing mind. If you do that, you're creating an obstruction there, because the knowing mind is just this gnosis, this gnosis, gnosis, this knowing aspect of mind that knows its own body. So again, that is not you being aware. You have to guard against that so that you see through that. This is what we call turning the mind's eye inward. And this is when we begin to turn the mind's eye inward, this is the door to Chan, the transcendence. The transcendence is simply awakening from the idea that this world is separate and apart and has a independent origination to all aspects of it, and just simply seeing as mental formations arising within mind. Mind itself is not a mental state. Mental states arise in mind, but again, those are invisible crystals. So we have to discern that by turning the mind's eye inward. We're resting the mind in mind, but we see things. What do we see? Wisdom. Your true mother is wisdom. The mother of all Buddhas is wisdom. And so turning the mind's eye inward is looking into mind, not from, let's say, here we have a subject and object, and it's looking at things. And this one that's looking at the object believes that there's a distance there, and there's also a distance amongst all the other ones that are doing the same type of mental processing, but they're all illusions. They're not really there, but they appear to be there, and we buy into the validity of it because it happens so frequently. So we see things in this way. It's kind of the way in the movie pictures, and you're watching a movie picture, right? And you see the people moving, and they can move their hand this way and that way or whatever, but really it isn't in that way, because the movie picture is made up of these individual moments that are moving by so quickly that they give the appearance of movement in stillness. Each one of those little frames is still. It's not moving at all, but it gives the appearance of movement. And this is where you get tricked. When you sit in silent illumination, you're not watching the flittering. Mind is just there. The projector is not moving. When it begins to move a little bit, the mind is aware of it. Turning the mind's eye inward, it sees this, and on its own nature, it will dissipate because you're not giving it any mental energy to sustain it. So it literally starves to death from lack of attention. You're not giving it any mind energy. And the mind is very powerful. And even when used in the wrong way, you see the energy we have, the energy to send somebody to the moon. Well, like, we haven't done that before. I think I remember seeing them actually landing on the moon in 1969. So it's not that great of an accomplishment anymore. I'm not quite sure about that. Sorry, I'm editorializing, but it isn't anything great. I mean, we see things just as they are, and everything that we see, we see it as it is. And when we turn the mind's eye inward, we turn the mind towards its own intrinsic wisdom. We turn the mind towards its own intrinsic wisdom, looking at everything, seeing that it's all interconnected. That's what the Buddha taught. The first thing he taught was the law of dependent origination. And the very first one, of course, was ignorance. It isn't your ignorance. Let me repeat that to you, because some of you people are self-flagellants, and as as self-flagellants, you're always whipping yourself, saying "mi culpa, my fault, my fault." But it's not you. You are not at fault. You're an appearance in mind. The ignorance was the ignorance of mind itself. Now, here's where we get into the inconceivable part of the program, as Master Dao Xin said once, because it is in this way that we cannot say when ignorance began or even how it began, but we know that it is a product of mind, not a product of you. You are a product of the ignorance of mind. So we should avoid any kind of internal discussion when we're sitting in meditation. And so you should not be thinking about anything. If you do, let it go. It's okay. All right, you thought about something. You thought about the donut. All right, just put the donut down and just go back to resting. Even if you thought of the donut, you're not going to be able to take a bite of it. It's an illusory bite. Just leave it alone. You don't have to do anything. You understand, if you're there and you stir up the dust in a water tank, it's going to get murky. So you just simply rest it there. And as you do this, then the mind gets into a part. This is the inconceivable aspect of it, is that you are now using the perception of non-perception. This is very important. This perception of non-perception, meaning that it's not subject and object perception. It's not you looking at something. It's the perception of knowing from this gnosis that we talked about. Like your body, if you had an itch on your body, you wouldn't have to look at it to find where it itches. You would know, oh, the itches, on the back of my leg or the top of my head or wherever. You don't have to go like, where did that come from or whatever. You're just aware of it because that's your body. Everything there in this totality of consciousness is the Buddha body. It's not separate. It is not a thing, nor not a thing. It is just simply the thusness of mind. So then, so as you practice, you let your awareness, as you're sitting, begin to extend to infinity. Is something that Master Suzuki said, that to give your mind a great pasture to roam in. And I really like that. That was something, one of the very first Chan books I read, and I really picked up on that, to let the mind have a great pasture to roam in, and means that you're not setting walls in the mind. You just simply let the mind expand. You don't have to purposely try to shoot out test flares in all directions. You just let it there so it has room. Your mind should have room. It shouldn't be so condensed in. This is the way some of you practice when you're sitting on the cushion. You're just trying to like hold it all in and hold your method that way. You can see how much tension that is. But if you just let it open up, it works. Again, it's this again, but it's just opening it up. It's freeing it. And so this is the nature of the true nature. Its consciousness, its awareness is infinite. To the next part. When we turn the mind's eye inward, we let the mind rest in its own true nature of emptiness. Again, this emptiness, even when we say that it's in this matrix, the matrix is not an empty tin can. It is the exact opposite. The matrix of the mind is has infinite capacity, and it is empty simply because the most distant star is intimate with the smallest little electron floating around you. They are not two. They are all connected in this way, and it is something very interesting. You have to kind of see this kind of an intimacy of your intrinsic nature, your true nature. As you begin to practice, you begin to use the most subtlest of wisdom to discern that the slightest movement of consciousness is illusory. So you just let it go. It's illusory, and you just bring it back down again. It is like a morning star or a flash of lightning. It's there one moment and then it's gone. Maybe it make another flash of lightning, but it's not the same. It's not lasting. Just let it go. Let the mind rest there. It doesn't have to come spatially down to anywhere. This dropping of it is actually dropping and expanding out. Let me see. So when you what we're doing in our practice, what you're doing when you're meditating, is you're locating the source of all appearances, the wellspring of where everything comes from. Once understanding that this mind is the wellspring, then just let it stay there. There's nothing else that you have to do with it. And there was a couple of things here that I had some quotes on. I had been talking about sealing off, or this great seal, Mahamudra. And in Tibetan Buddhism, it refers to the ultimate nature of reality, the emptiness and luminous awareness, which is sealed by this profound understanding. It means that when you're sitting in this way, there's this emptiness, and again, not the empty can emptiness, but the emptiness of the totality of everything, and this awareness, mind's own awareness, not consciousness, but awareness. It is sealed with this profound understanding. That is the transcendence. It's not that hard to get there. Really, it isn't that hard to get to this transcendence. You just don't get in the way. You're always there. You're like and standing in a parade, and then you got a good view, and then your ego gets in front of you and goes, I want to see what's there, and you mess it up. Get out of the way. Just get out of the way. Then it's sealed. It's right there. This sealing, this Mahamudra, this great seal, is this transcendent understanding. And I hesitate to use the word understanding because it's not understanding like, oh, I understand. It isn't in that way. It is just a nonverbal, beyond words and phrases understanding. And I've been kind of playing with, there's also what's called the four Dharma seals. Sometimes they talk about it as the four or the three Dharma seals or marks of existence, and which is kind of interesting. Here this was coming from a Tibetan one, so they talked about it as four Dharma seals, where we would say the three marks of existence. And in terms of that, and that one of them is impermanence, that all appearances are impermanent. Mind is immutable. Mind is never born nor dies, but all appearances are that way. So we seal it. We go, anything that moves is the arising mind. The one that knows that is the non-arising mind. And then there is everything is empty. That it's devoid of any independent existence. And then the last one is kind of the joker in the deck, literally the joker in the deck, which in some circles is called nirvana, and in some it's called suffering. So if you look up the marks of existence, you'll see some places where they quote it as nirvana, some places they quote it as suffering. The Tibetans said, why play around with it? We'll just make four out of it. And so they say there's the unsatisfactoriness of things and nirvana. But here's the kicker. Why is that there? And why is that this mark of existence or so-called existence? Because it's the same. I was talking to Sentha over the weekend and just mentioning to her, I wish we didn't have peace. Think about that. I really wish we didn't have peace in the world. Do you know why? Why would you think I don't want peace in the world? And somebody don't take me out of context and say Gilbert's a warmonger. It is because the only reason there's peace is because there's war. That's why it's a mark of existence. Because it's unsatisfactory. To be unsatisfactory, then one wants to move towards nirvana. One can't go to nirvana because it's unsatisfactory. Same thing, peace and war. If we don't have any peace, then that means there's no war. That's a pretty good deal. So when we sit, we just sit in peace. We could say that in this way, a calmness, but not the peace of a peace with war. You're not going to war with yourself there. You're sitting in this natural state of quietness. So when you meditate, bring all of this foundational principles to the cushion. You don't have to recite them. You just understand that those are the foundation about what you can do. They're just the reminders of what you're doing on the cushion. If you show up when you're on the cushion, you're not doing it right. Get out. Get out. That's why they say, oh, you have to follow the method. You have to do this. Don't have thoughts or whatever, but don't push anything out. Don't do it. There's no you there. There's no you. You can practice that way. You'll get there sooner or later between now and 5 kalpas. But why not take the shortcut? Why not just rest the mind and mind? That is silent illumination. Resting the mind and mind, you understand. If all of these appearances come up, you know precisely why those things are coming up. You don't have to go to war with your consciousness or your ego. Naturally, it's not there. So you just have to know how to use it. This is what I said very early on in my teachings. It's like using a rake in a garden, and the rake, you can take the weeds out with the rake. But everybody is using, instead of that, they're using this side, the opposite way. Why not turn the mind's eye inward, and then you can really have a good tool, a proper tool to practice with, turning the mind's eye inward. And then you understand. Then wherever you go, everything around you will be silently illuminated. There's no magic to sitting on the cushion and becoming magically illuminated. It's possible you can do that through concentration, samatha, and developing the samadhi, but it's no good if you don't take it off the cushion. You could just be, an Olympic meditator. So what? If you're that way and then you get off the cushion and then you just resume all your habitual patterns, all you did was prove that you could sit, for a while, but it has to be off the cushion. That this is why the key to it of in terms of the practice, what Nagarjuna said was dhyana, which is the practice, and all the others are subsumed into that, the concentration, the samatha, the samadhi, samapati, the meditative absorption. All of those are components of collectively in dhyana. And in this way of practicing, it's a different way of defining what practice is. That's what you're doing anyway. Dhyana means chan, or the Chinese adapted that word chan from the word dhyana, which is to practice. But the practice incorporates all of those other components of it. When you do it in the right way, it will produce the proper results. So now I hope that helps you. This is probably the first time I've gone into this detail on silent illumination from right view. And so, you can sit there and you can try to quiet yourself and stuff like that. But every time you try to do it, it's just like you're fanning the flames. Or you just turn the mind's eye inward and just choose to rest mind and mind. So that's it. Ended up right on time. So I'll take questions. Thank you for listening. Did we lose a lot of people today?
Actually, no. 15 minutes in, and Michael also sent an email. So, and
Okay.
Mighty Network is back up.
Okay, not bad. Yeah. So that's good. And no questions? Where are my regulars? Also, I want to know if this is helpful to you, or so it doesn't necessarily have to be a question. It can be a comment. The operators are standing by. There goes Tori, ascending. Is that an applause or a question? There it goes. Somebody figured out how to do all those things. Nobody's. Oh, okay. Spencer, you have a question, and then we'll go with Winston.
Hi, it's Sonia.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
When you were talking about, it was early in the lecture, you were talking about there's no, I'm trying to think of how you said it, but you were saying there's no us to come or go. And I remembered in previous lectures, you had said, you reach this point of awareness and you keep coming back and coming back to help and, bring other people to awareness. So were you talking about reincarnation, or I was kind of confused about that part?
It's in this lifetime that we're constantly, you know, let's say, uh, recertifying the idea of the ego, personality, life, and being, which in the end will produce a reincarnation or so-called reincarnation. We don't believe in the transmigration of souls, but there's an appearance of what may be considered to be an extension of your consciousness from this lifetime. Although it could be in any kind of body, male, female, or realm, animal realm, ghost realm, heaven realm, whatever. But all of that is simply a birth and death, moment to moment, of of the illusory consciousness. So you could say yes and no to the question, but the big trick is in this lifetime to let those things go. Okay, so that you don't keep repeating this habitual pattern. The habitual pattern, it matters not whether it's this lifetime or the next lifetime. The one good thing is that you get another chance, to practice again. But you also want to try to get it right as early as you can. So just see it that way, as a birth and death of the ego, moment to moment. The good thing about that is that one can bring the mind to a quietness where that it's neither a birth nor a death anymore of you. It is just a cessation of these habitual patterns. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Winston.
Oh, Gilbert. I find the talk today you explained silent illumination is really helpful. And also going back to last week, the way we went over samadhi, samapati, and also dhyana, it it gave me, well, doing my practice, I was following your lecture, and I felt it gave me a sense of direction, how to practice, and I was able to find there's a difference by following going in this direction and feel the quietness. I'm not there yet, but I can see there's a difference after your talk. So I really want to express that it has been very helpful for me.
Oh, thank you. The thing is that, like, for you to feel the difference, it's kind of like starting to turn that eye inward, and then you can actually immediately feel a difference in it, and the idea of meditating with this kind of a foundation, so that you're not confused as to what the mind should be experiencing in that time. We don't try to make the mind blank, but on the other hand, we don't chase after or chase out any kind of mental movements or mental states arising. We just essentially see through them. So yeah, that's the way it is. So now you have the right direction. I think it'll really help you quite a bit in your practice. Just, take some time to sit on the cushion and try this out. All of you, try this out on the cushion and try it out in your daily lives. You'll be very surprised how it will change. Okay. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Edil, there you are.
Hi. Hi, Gilbert.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. So, yeah, despite all the challenges, I made it. So my my comment first, I mean, it was very, very useful for me to listen. It certainly will help the practice. While I'm listening, I just realized I'm doing something and I just wanted your opinion on that. Especially this morning when I was meditating, the environment was extremely loud. So, I mean, there is already like all this, all these conversations going on. So I just let them go, not to push myself to quiet all down. But on top of it, there was, noise outside. So, and I kept saying one thing and one thing only. I said, I'm resting my mind in mind. So just, despite all the noise inside and out, I was able to sit. So when you said that, if we don't practice this, this practice outside the cushion, we're just Olympic meditators. So I guess my question is this the right approach? Even, outside the meditation or inside the meditation, dealing with the noise inside and out, is this the right approach, what I have been trying and what I did? And what is your suggestion, a guidance?
I think you're on the right way to do it. My point about not isn't necessarily trying to perfect the sitting practice, but understanding that the meditation itself, sitting meditation, is not a means to an end. It is a controlled environment where one practices mind, and one can actually have a realization on the cushion. But I've actually had greater realizations off the cushion than I have on the cushion. And so, but it is something that whatever we practice has to be useful in our daily life. Otherwise, all we are is a great, sitting practitioner. And so that's why I wanted to distinguish that, so that people don't become attached to just simply sitting in meditation. Huineng and his platform sutra, he was not a big meditator, but his practice reflected a moment-to-moment practice. And I'm not saying you shouldn't meditate. I think you should, but the thing is that you have to have the right attitude when you practice. So it's fine. You're going through the points and understanding. Okay, you're tested inside your brain and your consciousness, and outside maybe there's a jackhammer, people yelling, cars, whatever, and inside it's the same. But then when all you do is you don't have to block it out.
Mm-hmm.
You simply have to seal it. And sealing it isn't sealing it like, using some sealing wax and, covering something with it. Sealing it is seeing through it, being aware of it as it is. And so this is the way that you should practice. So you're fine. Just keep going the way you're going. No,
Thank you.
I wouldn't change anything right now with where you're at. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I know we had some comments, but I don't know if any of them were questions. Oh, Sonia, you pop back up? Or you just left your hand there?
Hi, it's Veronica.
Yeah, I'm a
Okay, go ahead.
yes. So I actually, I've been watching for a couple times now. I appreciate you very much. I actually have a question. I have done meditation in the past. I started learning kind of like on YouTube from different Buddhist mindsets of it. And they would tell me like the whole, okay, it's okay. If you want to stop thinking, just keep thinking, it'll go away. I did that where it totally blanked my mind. Now I started doing it in the sun so long, 20 minutes or so, to where all of a sudden I had an experience, this is where I'm getting to my question about remote viewing. It kind of creeped me out. This is when I actually stopped doing it because I noticed it was very wow, but I saw myself outside of myself where I was. I could see myself sitting, I could see everything around me as if had a projector over my head. And it was really wild. And I didn't know where that came from. So I wanted your thoughts on what the heck that is. And then I looked in and yeah, just if you could explain that. I didn't know if it's just a personal experience or if it is connected to remote viewing, because someone told me that once. And I just never tried. I never really meditated like that again. Kind of weirded me out a little bit.
That's actually a very positive result. Actually, I was talking on the weekend with Senth about this, and I have to find the quote, but it's from Rinpoche, Tibetan master Thubin Rinpoche, and he said, it may appear that your mind begins to split into two, where you're seeing the things happening. The difference is that where before you're here seeing this, but what happens is the gnosis, the actual mind itself, let's say this is like an eye, it sees, and what it sees is the object and the subject that you were there. So it moves away from appearances, including you. And so there's a confusion there, because all of a sudden you go, well, how can I see myself like this? But all it is mind actually using its own perception, not the perception of the five skandha, but its own perception to see what is appearing in mind, which includes you. So you are no longer confused into thinking that you're on this side looking this way. You're not. You've always been on this side in appearances and this mind looking at it. But because it's been obstructed, this isn't seen. You only see subject and object. But when it pulls away for a while, then you'll begin to experience this kind of what appears to be some out-of-body projection, where you see the scene in which you perceive your body to be in, but it's not truly your body. It's just simply a projection. But but the mind is clarifying everything because it's using its own perception of non-perception. So it's non-perception, meaning it's not subject-object perception. It is just simply seeing things as it is, the totality of what's happening in that moment. So it's a good thing. Don't cling to it, okay? Don't look for it, but if it happens, it's okay. It's a sign that you're practicing sincerely. So keep going. Do what I mentioned is do the things that got you there, okay? But don't look for it. And if it pops up, it pops up. If it doesn't, it's okay. All right. It isn't necessarily a progression of something that you have to pass through. It is just an experience of mind, but it's an excellent result at this point, especially, just barely coming into this kind of a right view training, that you're able to perceive in that way. So it's good. So
Thank you.
2 thumbs up. Okay. Anybody else? You guys are going to let me go easy tonight. So yeah, I was just interested to see, what you guys thought of, what was whether this helped you in terms of understanding. To me, I mean, I'm biased because I'm the one that's giving the lecture, but I was saying what I wished I had heard, when I first started, because it's something that can save a lot of time in terms of practice. The more that you practice in that way. Okay, go ahead, Joyce.
Hey, Gilbert. Yeah, I found tonight very helpful, and I want to thank you always pointing out that the 12 links, including the consciousnesses, are still illusions. I it I forget those are illusion easily. I think because when I and a lot of people started studying Buddhism, we all study the 12 links, we study the Four Noble Truths, we study what the Yogacara, the eight consciousness. Everything just seems like a solid reality, a solid theory. So now I'm just kind of stuck in the okay, all those are the basic theories. I just always thought they are real. It's hard to turn around to remember, actually they are still illusion. So yeah, thank you very much for always pointing those out.
Yeah, I think there's a grave mistake in the presentation of the 12 dependent originations where the presenters are attaching to all the 12 as some product of the ego, but it's actually not that way. Ignorance comes first, and you don't show up in terms of birth and death until the last two. And so it is something that as you're now doing this, I've taken that all away. And so then you have to go like, what the heck, so you're trying to reorganize everything and trying to compartmentalize all of these things, but there's no compartments to put them in anymore, which is good. That's exactly where you should be. You should have the sensation that you're walking across the floor, that there's marbles all over the floor. No, and you can't find any footing for the ego or for the self. So it should feel a little unsteady. That's good. That's exactly where you should be at. And then as you begin to transcend it, then your foundation is on what I taught tonight. And then you have the faith in what I taught, and then you also have later the experiential relation to it, where now you begin to experience that in mind, and beginning to experience more of the self nature of mind rather than trying to polish the ego. So it's good. It's exactly where you should be at. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Few were dropping comments on in the notes, so I appreciate that. But okay, well, tonight's class was one that what I'm trying to do is go back to the practice on for you on the cushion, and I want you to try this out. Maybe next week, if you've tried this out, come back, and if you have questions or you have comments, or if you say, "Hey, this worked," or "This didn't work," or "I have this kind of a question about it," let me know. I just think that it's kind of like sometimes I quote the Emeril Lagasse, the chef, and it's a matter of Silent Illumination Revisited is just kind of kicking it up a notch, and building on what I've been presenting to you and saying, okay, now let's see what this works like on the cushion. And to me, it works very well when we do it in this way. But then we can find that all of this kind of fits in. And so I hope you really avail yourself of some time to sit and practice this and to try it out, and you'll see. And again, it's not just sitting on the cushion. Even when you get off this lecture, maintain a silence, a calmness there. And it's funny because I'm getting more and more calm, and sometimes, and so people will go, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Yes, I'm fine." And they go, "But you sound like so quiet." I go, I am now, I'm quieter than I was, even though I talk a lot, but I'm calmer, I'm quieter, and I still have the same problems, as the one young monk said, "I'm as miserable as ever," but the thing is that it's a quietness that's there, and it's okay. Sometimes we measure our progress on external factors, that things that are happening around us, and go, what good this goes, this happens, the IRS called me, or whoever's there, or whatever it is, the boss calls you into the office, or you're the boss and you have to let somebody go, or whatever, all these factors, and you think, is this my happy home? No, it's not really, but your home is very quiet and very silent. So best to just stay at home, and listen to your mother. Okay. All right. Okay, you guys, I will see you next week. Thank you all for joining in, and fighting through the trouble. So take care.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gilbert.